right, Nishant, how are you doing today?
Good, David. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. So you're joining us from San Francisco
Yeah, in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Bay
Yeah,
Area. So are you like in the city or are you in the south?
I'm in East Bay,
East Bay. Okay,
but
very
about
cool.
20 minutes from the city. Yeah,
Nice, awesome. Well, thank you once again for joining this episode. For everyone listening in today, I'm talking to Nishant Raman, and Nishant and I connected a month ago, and we were like, okay, let's come together and talk about some amazing thing that he and his team are doing. So, for everyone listening in, Nishant, like, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself to the people and what you're doing right now?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so yeah, I'm as David mentioned, I'm Nishant Raman. So I've been kind of focused on the data infrastructure space for the most of my career. So I've kind of hopped around a few different high growth startups within the tech space, from logistics, healthcare, as well as fintech, and kind of solving all sorts of data problems from more SRE and scaling systems all the way to creating like canonical data sets for our analytics and data science teams.
That's amazing. So, how long have you been doing the data stuff? It's for now.
Yeah. So I've been doing it since I've left school in 2017. So yeah, about 8 years now.
Nice. There's been a pretty wild explosion since 2017. I do not know how much you recall. In 2017, there was this paper that came out called "Attention is All You Need." That birthed the transformer model that ended up in what we see today in large language models and everything. And it's been like crazy explosion in what data can do and what data has enabled us to do. So it's pretty cool that I get to talk to you about what you have been doing in the data infrastructure space. So that's really cool. So, tell us a little bit about what kind of work you do at your company. If you can tell us a little bit about what your company does, or what your role and your team does too.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm kind of working on like the cloud and data team. So we do everything from, as you can think, like, developer experience or SRE type work, all the way from like data infrastructure, maintaining our databases and scaling our databases, all the way to our data platform and data warehousing solutions.
Nice,
And so
very
we're
cool.
it's the role or the team is pretty much in charge of making sure those are reliable and scalable, in terms of both supporting internal analytics use cases as well as enabling our product and applications as well.
Nice, that's awesome. So, when you talk about like data infrastructure, how did you get into the data side of the world? Like, what made you choose this path?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I actually probably have like a funny story. So I actually got into it by accident. So I actually joined a company in 2018. The company was about 450 people at the time, and they didn't have a centralized data team. But I was kind of working as an engineer, kind of building a lot of like internal tooling. So the data stuff kind of came into that team, and so I was doing a lot of data infrastructure, data engineering type work. And then as the company grew in scale, I think they started to realize, hey, we need a centralized data team. And so I actually switched over to be the first data engineer on that team, and it's been a great ride since. And I've
Nice.
always been interested in the data space in terms of distributed systems and also all the new modern tooling. So it was almost like a natural fit.
Very good. So why don't you like, break that up a little bit and help us understand, obviously the data infrastructure side, there's a lot that happens, right? Obviously we've known about databases for a while. In many ways, we now know what a data engineer does. And then tell us the kind of problems that you've been seeing in the last 5 6 years that has risen in this, data infrastructure space, really. So
Yeah, 100%. And I think this kind of as we all know, the buzz of AI is booming right now. And so a lot of companies or most companies are trying to experiment with AI. And I think they're realizing they're first coming at it from a product angle, and then they realize, oh, to enable this AI use case, we need modern and scalable data infrastructure. And so I think that a lot of times, with internal analytics, you actually don't really need near real time use cases, and a lot of things can be kind of like hourly or 2 hour delays. But I think for a lot of AI use cases, especially when it's embedded into the product, near real time pipelines become even more important. And then the a lot of people are talking about vector databases and how do we power RAG in applications. So I think that's a really interesting and cool space that's going to be blowing up and has been blowing up in the
Yeah.
last few
Yeah, I
years.
would love to get into that with you specifically. So tell me, like with the kind of technologies that you're playing around with, are you more involved on the database side of it? Are you also involved in data engineering, data pipeline? Do you get to play around with Kafka or streams and things like that?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So yeah, right now, in my current role, we're playing around with a pretty standard like data uh a platform kind of stack. So you can think of it, we're using Aurora with PostgreSQL, streaming data to Snowflake via Fivetran. So our kind of our tools and stack that are powering like analytics is pretty standard.
Right.
But I think a cool thing is also on our database side. So in our product where we're actually trying to enable text search, and I think open search is a pretty common tool out there, but there's this been new development called with this extension called PG search, which is built
Mm-hmm.
by ParaDB. And so kind of having like a Postgres native and tool that's at the same scale as something like search is super cool. And
Yeah.
I think that's like a really cool thing that we're experimenting with. And then in previous roles, yeah, especially when I was working in healthcare, using vendors like Fivetran generally aren't okay, especially when we're dealing with sensitive data. And
Right.
so there, we actually had to build in-house streaming pipelines using,
In-
Debezium, Kafka, Spark
right.
structured streaming as well.
Yeah, very cool. I think Fivetrans got built a really good niche around the CDC capabilities, right? Like they're pretty much now connected with a lot of, databases and solutions. So it's pretty good. One of the things I like about what you were saying was like, is this new modern data architecture requires like scale, right? And so why don't you like delve into that a little bit and tell us about how you've handled that? Yeah,
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I think when typical data warehousing tools like Snowflake or BigQuery in the past, they were really good at what they did, right? But they don't really support these AI use cases today. And so there's a big shift. I think there was first a shift going moving from open source into like managed services. And I
yeah,
think now you're actually seeing a little bit of a shift moving from managed services back into open source. So
interesting.
thinking about data stores like Iceberg and Delta Lake, I think are becoming really important, and those are actually enabling really fast, data transformations and data retrievals on new modern tools like Mother Duck and stuff like that. And then you also have standard data engineering tools like Spark, who can
Yeah.
also consume from that as well.
Yeah, I used to be a heavy Spark user for at least till about 5 years ago. Uh, how much Spark do you feel people are still using, or do you think they're more towards the data lake side of things now?
Yeah, I think people are. I think with the shift to these open source data formats like Iceberg and Delta, I think Spark is still going to be used and still going to be here. But obviously, Spark is really good for like batch style transformation. So
Yeah.
I think anything that's going to be needing really fast near real time, you'll have to think about more streaming mechanisms.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. It's very interesting the way when you were saying the problems related to scale, right, and data pipeline. What is one of the most crazy scale problem that you have seen in the past related to that?
That's a really great question. So I think like we when we were building out like our custom CDC pipeline, right? This was all kind of using like open source Kafka as well as Debezium. And a big problem was kind of how do we predict throughput from our
Yeah,
application, right? And so you can kind of, and I think this is where like auto scaling and kind of using more managed services can kind of help. But there's only so much and so fast these auto scaling services can come. So a big problem or a big way to or a big problem that most people have is how do you predict throughput, especially in a real life scenarios? Throughput is constantly changing, right? And then you also have to manage that with costs. As like streaming pipelines are always on, but that means you're always paying the bills
yeah,
for them. So I think that's a big challenge. And I think one way that we mitigated this was kind of doing really good tool discovery and try to figure out, hey, like, do we actually need to be running this Kafka service
Huh.
on ourselves, or could we use like managed services like AWS managed services or other platforms out there? So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the work you need teams need to do up front to kind of
Right. And I
identify.
think what I liked about what you're saying is like like you can design a pipeline and you can throw whatever technology that you're familiar with, and you can probably have a scalable solution, but you have to consider the cost that also needs to be managed with that, right? Like that, are there any other things that you recommend people should do when they're thinking about designing systems? Obviously, what you mentioned, like having Fivetran, having like a data lake, and there are certain standard technologies in this bucket to choose from. But what are your go-tos?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I tend to think, especially for smaller companies, right? Like
Yeah,
headcount is not usually there. And so you don't really have the or like like the team sizes are generally pretty lean. So it's really beneficial to think about like managed services first.
right,
And then when you think about managed services, then you also have to weigh the cost of like, okay, like does this managed service scale to what because we don't we have less control, right? And so there's a balance of kind of figuring out like, okay, internal control versus like less maintenance costs.
right.
And I think it's a tricky equation, and you're never going to get it perfect, but kind of having that balance and being able to pivot quickly is also really important.
Right, yeah. And I think there are these two ends, right? That you mentioned. There's this end where people are like, we want all of this data cleaned up, provided to us so we can do some analytics. So I believe your internal teams would be getting some of that data. They might be making their own charts and business reports and things like that. But there's also this angle, what you mentioned is the real time, the app experience where everybody's like, hey, in real time, we have all of this application experience that's pushing data down the stream, it's getting stored somewhere, right? How do you think when you take databases and you choose databases for that, do you what kind of database choice do you make? Like, are you like on the Postgres side of the world? Are you on the SQL side? Are you on the NoSQL side? There are so many databases to choose from. So, as a data infrastructure guy, what's your like familiarity with that? So,
Yeah, I would say I'm generally like a Postgres guy. I think Postgres has kind of shown that it's been able to scale decently for most applications. And obviously,
okay.
there's a certain level where it won't scale, but I think standard Postgres usually is good enough, at least a good start.
Hmm, that's cool. And when you choose Postgres, you were talking about like the search capability, like PG search and everything. How does that go along with Postgres? Like, can you break it down for us a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So as I mentioned, there's like this new extension called Postgres extension called PG Search, which is developed by ParadeDB. And so this ParadeDB is a pretty new small company out there, but basically what they've enabled is like a distributed version of Postgres that can like auto scale. And so and then they've also kind of built these special indexes, which are using like the BM25 ranking function. And so with this, you can actually do text search really fast, and it's almost faster than a tip something a search on like Spark or something like that, right? And so I think, and they've kind of been able to do this within like having like a Postgres interface. So having a Postgres interface is nice just because a lot of people are comfortable with it, and there's a lot of tooling around it. But then having those nuances on the back end to power things like text search have been really amazing and really cool to
Got
see.
it. So what's the like? I'm just curious now, because then it sounds like MariaDB, but it's not. It's by another company, but like Elasticsearch is also a pretty good search option, right? Like, so it's like, is it competing with that?
Yeah, I would say Elasticsearch at
Open
Amazon
search, yeah.
OpenSearch is probably a similar comparison. The nice like as probably people who have worked with it before is like you need actually sophisticated ETL pipelines
Right.
to bring data into those data stores. With something that's like Postgres compatible, it can use something like logical replication
Hmm.
which is Postgres out of the box to stream data into the destination store.
Right. That's interesting. I'm gonna go check it out. Um, this particular project, and I'll give you my feedback on how that works actually. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you mentioned we were talking about AI, and I think you cannot have a conversation now. with even your daughter without talking about AI. You know,
Exactly,
I
exactly,
I
yeah.
have a 6-year old, and the other day she was showing me a video, and I'm like, this is like a fake video. You know that, right? Like, this is not real because it was completely AI generated. So it's like I feel like AI is penetrating pretty much everything that I see around me. A question for you is, how are you guys including AI in your like data generation pipeline and cleanup and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, yeah, like, we're building, kind of, specialized models, for our industry, and I think it takes a lot of just like, doing a lot of training on our data. And so I think, we're the way we're doing it right now is probably not what I would do, if I was to start from scratch, but we're basically having training pipelines that, take data from, Snowflake, convert them into Parquet, and then, are able to, create embeddings from them to train our models and stuff. So that's kind of how we're using AI today. But as you can imagine, right, we're actually doing multiple hops, right? We're like ingesting data into Snowflake, converting that to Parquet, and then we only get value on it. So I think if I was to do this differently, we'd probably, implement the open source formats that I was talking about before, and maybe have Iceberg as like our data lake layer that, tools like Snowflake can consume from, Spark can consume from, other tools like Mother Duck can consume from. So that's something that, I think is something I would change.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Like, I think that's a much more efficient way to kind of consolidate bunch of things that you're trying to do, right?
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's very similar to what you said. Like, I mean, I have noticed like that I have a friend who's doing some data engineering stuff, and one of the things that he told me recently was that they have this requirement where they have all of this data sitting in documents. Now, the problem is the document is at least like a 2 MB document,
Yeah.
and so they want to start having some meaning out of it, right? So the easiest way to think about it is, okay, let's just feed this document to an OpenAI API endpoint and then write a prompt, and it's going to start generating some great things out of it. But then he started telling me that they have to start doing this with at least 500,000 documents. And so then that adds to the cost itself, right? So I kind of got reminded when you were saying the idea that you have to start thinking about the bill associated with data infrastructure to make sure this kind of operates. So in their case, what they've started to now do is they've actually started. They have bought a few, A100s, the old GPUs, and they have hosted it. And what they're doing is they are basically running their own local, GPU data centers, where they're running an open source Gemma 3 model that actually gets all of this data from this document, and then it turns it into a JSON with the most essential information that they're looking for. They store it in Elasticsearch, and then they are serving it as a pipeline to other systems, actually. It's a pretty neat use case, but yeah,
Yeah,
something I thought would be interesting.
that's definitely one way to mitigate costs is, right? Just like host it yourself. But
Yeah,
uh,
because he told me that they were able to cut their cost down by 75%.
right, right.
So
I'm curious, did he mention anything about like maintenance costs of the
no,
in-house servers?
I think they're just renting it on Runpod or something. Yeah,
Oh, that's even better. Yeah,
that's what
that's
I'm thinking. Yeah, because he said they got some A100s, and I think that's probably renting it out. So
got it,
yeah,
got it, got it. Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
Because I feel like at some point, like, yeah, everybody wants to put AI into their existing pipeline, but that cost is going to become exponentially expensive. And so, along with having a managed service bill from, say, your cloud provider, you now have to start having an AI specific bill. The reality is, will an end user or a customer start paying you more? Not really. I mean, so,
Yeah,
so
it's a really hard thing, right? Because I think like most companies right now, they feel like they'll be left behind if they don't adopt AI
yeah.
quickly and fast, but they'll start throwing a bunch of things at it without giving it much thought. And yeah, your AI bill compared to your, standard AWS bill is like not even close anymore.
It's crazy. I do not know what your AI bill looks like, but for my friend's use case, he was saying that their OpenAI bill was daily $700 because they would get 500,000 new documents, and they would process that through, and that they're looking, and even though it's like 0.001, the amount of tokens per document is at least 20 25,000. So you're basically, I mean, that's an average, but it's adding up to a extended bill of 600K or $600. But yeah, it's crazy.
It's really crazy, and I think, like, that's, like, monitoring the bill and, like, being able to make the decision of cutting things quickly if it's
Yeah,
not, providing revenue. I think that's gonna be really important for companies to do moving
yeah.
forward,
Well,
yeah.
while we are on this AI topic, you mentioned the RAG side of things. Let's walk me through that. Like, how are you guys addressing that?
Yeah, so I haven't done this at my, current place, but I've, worked on similar things at previous companies, and the way, this is kind of having some kind of mechanism to refresh, a RAG for an actual live AI use case. We're actually doing the way that we kind of designed it. We were on Databricks at the time. So we built actually these pipelines. So, like, once it lands into Databricks, we get a change feed from Databricks. So
Hmm.
as new records come in, we pass it through an embedding model. So we were just using some off the shelf model on hosted on SageMaker, and then dumping that into a Postgres database. We were using PG Vector for
Yeah,
the vectorization, for the vector store, and that's kind of like what the data store was that our AI agent was actually consuming from.
right.
So that's kind of how I've seen it done in the past. But there's a lot of cool vector stores out there. Like, I think there's a lot of buzz around, like, Pinecone. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've
I
heard of
mean,
that.
I don't know how much you know about this, but Cockroach Labs, well, we have a database called Cockroach DB, and CockroachDB starts supporting PG Vector because we are basically a Postgres database that is completely distributed, and it's for like highly scalable use cases. So if you're looking for a database that is always available, should never go down, and should perform and has Postgres compatibility, then you would pick something like CockroachDB. But we to that database we recently added PG Vector about, I think, 8 9 months ago, and we recently released a vector index as well. It's in preview, because at the end of the day, I think while Postgres makes sense, you have to start thinking about the problem of bloating and performance.
Yes.
So how was that? I mean, I'm just curious. Like, when you use PG Vector, how many vectors were you storing in PG Vector?
I don't have the amount, but yeah, the way we were scaling was throwing more money at it, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, just keep increasing the instance sizes and stuff, and we were not doing it efficiently. And I think
right.
when you're doing these things for the first time, you won't. But yeah, I this feature that you're talking about with Cockroach DB, I'll definitely have to check it out. It seems really
Yeah,
really
you should go
interesting.
check it out. So it basically allows you to build a RAG applications now. If you want to, you can store your vector data along with your OLTP data, right?
Oh,
So
amazing.
I feel like I've been thinking about this. Like, there are a lot of folks building a lot of new types of databases, but one of the things I'm coming to realize is that already, if you're trying to migrate from, say, an old database or a legacy system, is a handful problem to deal with. But now, if you're trying to modernize that stack for, say, Gen AI enablement, then you have to basically consider transforming all of that existing OLTP data into some sort of embedded vector data. That means you have to, either your database doesn't support it, so you move to a vector data. And then, even if you move to a vector data, you have to make sure that this vector database can scale and perform and is
Yep.
always resilient. I don't know if yesterday there was a major Google outage, right? That led to like 100 plus everyday applications being down. My daughter, who was using YouTube, she's on summer vacation, came to me, the YouTube started working. I'm like, what happened? I thought the internet was down or something.
That's crazy,
So
right? That's something you never hear of usually, right? Yeah.
exactly. So it's like these are the kind of problems you don't think about, but these are so important, like mission critical, right? So in many ways, CockroachDB solves that problem, that it's always available, highly available database, that's Postgres. But at the same time, now we are adding the vector capability to that, so it's always available. So something like you should go check it out. It'll be interesting to see how you use it and what your feedback is from a RAG perspective on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, and it seems like really great use case. You kinda have, like, one data layer for both and multiple use cases, which is that's I think that's gonna be the shift.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm noticing is like it's very good to be in a POC stage or like in a staging environment. You're trying out all this technology, but you have to consider that when you take an open AI embedding model and you run embedding on it, it transforms your data into a dimension of at least 1500.
Yep,
And then when
exactly.
you store it into your database, that you change a small text into 3 kilobyte. And then when you have to scale it for a million or 2 million vectors,
You are.
you're bloating the data. You're going to have a major issues with performance when you start reading that vector in 3 kilobytes. And you have to also figure out a way to scan that as quickly as possible, right? So I'm seeing like those kind of decisions will be very critical in the infrastructure space. So yeah.
Exactly, exactly, yeah. 100% agree.
Yeah. So tell me like with the AI stuff, are you doing anything personally? Like are there any passion models that you play around with yourself?
Not too much, not too much. I definitely wear, more of the systems hat than the AI. I mean, obviously, using Copilot while I, do development, and then, I'm always using ChatGPT and Claude for personal, but haven't really been, like, playing too much around on, like, production type models, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how do you anticipate the adoption of like AI agents in the data infrastructure side of the business?
Yeah, no, I think, so I see, as most companies, right, like, they're gonna be a lot very product led, right? But I think they'll start seeing product value of having AI, and I think I was kind of, mentioning this earlier. They'll start trickling down, and as they try to figure out, "Oh, how do I solve this AI problem or enable this AI feature?" They're gonna start realizing the only way to power it is by, scalable data infrastructure behind the scenes. So I
Yeah.
think there's gonna be a lot more eyes and visibility as well as tooling around data infrastructure, in the future. Even though I know we already have like a maze of tools out there, I do think that's gonna be, it's gonna grow and get more specialized,
Yeah.
as AI adoption increases
Yeah,
over
I
time.
think it depends on the use case. I mean, at the end of the day, it'll come down to the use case, right? I think there is, in the last 10 years, there have been some fantastic projects that have come out that really solve these problems. When you were talking about CDC, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, scaling CDC itself is a hard problem. So, yeah,
It's a problem that, has almost always get there and, has always, been there, and I don't think anyone has fully solved it for all use cases yet.
right. Yeah. So, what's your favorite CDC platform or solution right now?
Yeah, I think for, I think so, we were talking about 5chan. 5chan has done a really great job of kind of be creating this, like, zero code CDC platform that's fully managed. I think, what 5chan, doesn't have is, like, true near real time. It's
Mm,
still actually micro batch, and I
yeah.
think you can pay more to get, like, 1 minute latency or something like that, but that's also the cost aspect as well, like,
Right.
how much
Right.
are you willing to pay for it? One tool that I've been kind of keeping my eyes on out there is this cool, tool or project called Estuary, .dev, and it's actually, so you can think of it like a 5chan, but it does actually support near real time into
Interesting.
these, managed, data lake solutions. Like, it can dump to Iceberg, Snowflake, Databricks, etc. So
Okay.
that's something I've been keeping my eye on. It's I think it's still a small project, but hopefully we'll see
Is it
more of
still like
it.
open source?
No, I think they have an open source version. Or they also have a paid managed version as well.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Very cool. Yeah. Well, I think the thing with data pipelines is it's not gonna go away.
Right.
It's only gonna get crazier. Like from here on, we're like I think there was a report yesterday, like just specific to AI. The Google's the number of tokens from last year to this year went 500% up. Like it's 5 times more. So if that's happening to Google and they need all of this data, where is all of that data going to come from? I'm pretty sure like you guys are going to be solving for scaling this infrastructure more and more. So
Exactly, exactly. And I think we're only gonna be learning and learning more, as the technologies grow. But yeah, I think it's gonna be very fluid over the next,
right,
10
yeah.
to 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, it's really cool to talk to you about this, Nishant. So I'm curious now for the people who are listening. I know we went on like a tangent around data infrastructure, and then we went into AI a little bit. What is the one myth about data infrastructure that you wish like people understood more and more?
I think I think that this will happen as time goes on, but I think a lot of people don't even know what data infrastructure means. And I think with the adoption of AI moving forward, it's just going to be, forefront of a lot of people's and a lot of companies' mind. I think right now it's something that a lot of companies don't even think about unless they actually have a need or a problem to solve. And
Yeah.
so I just, I think it's gonna shift over time, but that's something, if I was able to change people's opinions was get more eyes on data infrastructure upfront.
Right. Yeah. So a predictive question here for you. Do you think the data engineer's role, can a data engineer's role be done by an AI agent? Do you think that's going to be a possibility?
That's a great question, and I think, and it's probably a very controversial question
Yeah,
as
I
well.
know. I know.
But yeah, I think so the term data engineer, I feel like a lot of people have different definitions of it. So you can think of it all the way from like, managing these data tools like Kafka, Spark, or you can think of it as like, building ETL pipelines with like DBT. I do think that, like, we're seeing a shift where, like, BI is moving from dashboards to, like, AI agents. I don't think it's fully adopted yet, but I'm seeing a lot of shift in that, and so I think a lot of things that an analytics engineer would do is, like, merging data sets together and building out new trusted data sources. I think that actually could be, done and answered by AI in the future. In terms of, like, scaling systems, I think that's gonna be where AI is gonna have a little bit more challenge and understand like a production grade, durable distributed system, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that as you bring AI into the data infrastructure space, which will be very critical, would be is especially as you said, like BI can be sort of more, improved with AI. Somebody can say, okay, give me this report or give me this information, and AI
Right.
can basically run sort of like a group by aggregation and things like that and give statistics around it. One of the problems though is you have to make sure that it's providing trusted data.
Yes.
Like, it's not cooking up data. So you're like, "Hey, how much sales we did?" And you probably did, say, 3 million. It's not able to figure out the answer, and it says maybe looks at the trend for the last week and says, "Oh, you did 4 million." Like, I think that's where some of the decisions will have to be made around how can we make sure in this ecosystem, even though a data engineer or like a BI person can be replaced, how can we make sure we have security and secure data and accuracy into that, response? So,
No, yeah, 100%. And I think anyone who's used ChatGPT knows that these models can hallucinate, right? So,
right.
especially when you're talking about informing critical business decisions, that's going to be extremely important. Like, how trustworthy is this response, or what was the thought process for coming up with this response behind
Right.
this?
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's going to be fascinating where this world goes. So I'm going to ask you one question. Like, go back in the history of something that you designed, say 7 years ago, or say when you started your career with data infrastructure. If you have to design that today, what is your tech stack like?
That's a great question. I think I would probably yeah, so 7 years ago, I think, we were the first kind of data, stack I was using was, like, you can, like, Google BigQuery with Fivetran, for
Oh
instance,
yeah.
right? That's not scalable at all.
Mm.
So I would say, like, I would probably if I was gonna do that again, I would go completely with Iceberg as the data lake, maybe use Fivetran or like a Kafka Debezium type solution to get data into there, and then I would build everything on top of this Iceberg layer. So that could be
Right.
like our data warehouse. Like, you can configure BigQuery to read from Iceberg, or you can have, Spark jobs transforming data, or DuckDB doing fast analytics as well. So that's
Right.
probably how I would redesign that
Yeah.
first data stack I worked with.
How strongly, because it seems like you're an Iceberg fan, how strongly do you feel like Iceberg is going to become like the de facto standard that everyone is going to adopt?
I'm pretty confident, right? Because if you think about it, Parquet has always been there, right?
Yeah.
And Parquet hasn't gone away. Iceberg is
No.
just kind of putting that metadata layer and, having ACID compliance on top of fast file storage. And I think AI models really need fast file retrieval, and I think having formats like Iceberg in the future is going to be really important. I think it's going to be very adopted in the future.
Right. Right.
We're
Yeah.
we're also seeing, like, these managed services like Fivetran, Snowflake have, and offer Iceberg features as well.
Yeah. Yeah. How much do you anticipate that from the inference side of the business? Like, say you want to use this data for inferencing. Do you feel like people are going to store the data as is, or do you think they're going to vectorize it?
I think they're gonna vectorize it,
Got it.
and I think inference is gonna be a interesting one. Like, I think a lot of people want to do like OLAP type things or inference using file storage, but I don't think anyone has fully solved it for
Yeah.
inference right now. So there's TBD on that
Yeah,
question.
I
Yeah.
think so. I mean, this is where we do some bold predictions, here.
Right, right.
But it's good. I mean, it's very interesting that when I talk to some people, first time we're connecting, and then we do talk about some things. Okay, the world is going to be like this in a say an year or something. I meet the same people, say at a conference or something. I'm like, oh damn, we made some bold predictions. We should have just put some
Right.
money on it. But it's awesome. This is really great. As we go, what's your advice to someone who's starting off in data infrastructure? Who is thinking about making a career in this? Like, what's your advice? What are some of the things that you have learned that you would like to pass on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think one thing is definitely don't get comfortable with the tools you use today. Tools are constantly evolving in this space, and I think being able to adopt and being eager to learn as
Mhm.
developments come in is going to be really important to ensure that you're keeping up to speed and ensuring that you're providing value for your companies.
Amazing, amazing. So, I know you've been working in the startup space for almost 7 years. Why startup space?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I feel like I've always liked being a builder, and I think working at smaller companies, you actually get opportunities to build more. At bigger companies, I get the sense like you're kind of working in already built systems and then trying to update them or change them, maybe scale them, but you don't get that opportunity a lot of building from scratch. So that's
Right.
kind of how what's gravitated me towards startups more.
Brilliant. Yeah. But you always based out of the Bay Area, or you like moved there? Mm.
Yeah, no, I actually moved here to kind of be a little bit more in the tech space. I'm from Houston originally. That's where I was raised.
Nice, nice, nice. H Town is what people say.
H Town, yes, exactly.
Yeah, very good. Well, you have a great Rockets team, by the way. I hopefully next season will be better. So we'll see.
I know. We're hoping for it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it was great to have you, Nishant. I mean, I really appreciate you coming on. I know we quickly went through understanding some of the things you're doing. I feel like the kind of problems you're solving for this, especially working at a startup, I think you get to play around with a lot more cool technology and you get to iterate through that. And I think when you were talking through it, I felt like this is the kind of space we are going in right now, that every company will have to start adopting and figuring out how to scale and make decisions around how they manage the cost. And I think you're solving that. And it's been great to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. It's been thanks for having me. It's been great chatting with you about these topics.
This is awesome. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll connect again. And for everyone listening in, please go follow Nishant on, I believe, LinkedIn. Are you active on X by any chance? Like, do you put cool stuff out there?
No, not too much too active on X, but yeah, LinkedIn is a great way to reach
The
me.
one platform where we all exist.
Right, right.
Awesome. All right. So go follow Nishant, for cool things that he's doing and his company. And thank you once again, Nishant. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, David. Have a great one.